Revenge with Karen. There is a specific kind of silence that exists inside a sensitive compartmented information facility, or SIF. It's a heavy, pressurized silence, the kind that smells like recycled air, ozone, and the quiet hum of servers that hold the potential to level cities. I've lived in that silence for 15 years. I know the rhythm of national defense better than I know the rhythm of my own heartbeat. You design the encryption schema for a $2 billion missile response protocol. You don't just write code, you write the architecture of survival. I'm not a soldier. I don't carry a rifle. My weapon is logic, and my battlefield is usually a whiteboard in a windowless room at the Pentagon. But 3 months ago, the battlefield shifted to a glass-walled corporate office in Northern Virginia, and the enemy wasn't a foreign state actor. It was a man named Clayton Marks, a suit with a freshly printed business card and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I walked into the lobby of Helix Systems at 07:45 sharp. The building is one of those architectural flexes common in the defense sector. Too much glass, too much steel, designed to look transparent while hiding everything. Usually, the security guards, Miller and Davis, give me a nod. They know better than to ask for ID. I've seen me walk in with 3-star generals. But today, Miller wasn't at the desk. There was a new guy, young, looking nervous, tapping at a tablet. I approached the turnstiles. I pulled my badge from my purse, a hard plastic card with a magnetic strip that had granted me access to rooms that don't officially exist. I tapped it against the reader. Beep beep. Red light. I frowned, adjusting my grip. Maybe it was the magnet in my phone case. I tapped it again. Beep beep. Red light. Access denied flashed on the small OLED screen in polite, glowing letters. Ma'am, the new guard called out. He wasn't rude, just doing his job. If the badge isn't working, you'll need to sign in at the guest kiosk. I stopped. The air in the lobby felt suddenly thin. I looked at the badge in my hand. It wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was a symbol of 10 years of clearance work. To be relegated to the guest kiosk was an administrative glitch, surely. Maybe it was the first shot in a war I hadn't realized I was fighting. It's Diana Grant, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm the lead architect for the Sentinel protocol. My clearance is higher than the CEO's. Check the manual override list. The guard tapped his screen, his brow furrowing. I'm sorry, Miss Grant, I don't see you on the active employee roster. The system lists you as, let me see here, external vendor pending expiration. Pending expiration. Words hung in the air like smoke. By the way, before I get into how I dismantled this entire corporate structure, if you enjoy stories about competent people destroying incompetent management, hit subscribe and maybe leave a like. It keeps the team motivated to dig up these files. All right, back to the lobby. I didn't argue with the guard. Rule number 1 of engagement: never waste ammunition on a target that doesn't matter. The guard was a pawn. Player moving him was upstairs on the 40th floor. Fine, I said, I'll sign in. I walked over to the iPad mounted on a stand. It asked for my name, the person I was visiting, and most insultingly, my citizenship status. I typed Diana Grant. For the person I was visiting, I typed Clayton Marks. I printed the sticky paper badge that spat out of the machine. It was flimsy, thermal paper. I slapped it onto the lapel of my tailored blazer. It felt like a target. As I waited for the elevator, I let my mind run a diagnostic. Why now? The project was in phase 4. We were weeks away from the final Department of Defense review. The integration testing was 90% complete. The only variable that had changed in the last month was the leadership structure at Helix. The old VP of Strategic Accounts had retired to a golf course in Florida, and in his place came Clayton. Clayton, who had spent the last 5 years optimizing synergies at a mid-tier logistics firm. Clayton, who thought TCP/IP was a brand of craft beer. The elevator dinged. I stepped in, surrounded by junior analysts who were doom-scrolling on their phones. They didn't look up. In their world, I was just a middle-aged woman in a suit, probably HR or legal. I had no idea that the code running the security on their phones was based on a kernel I wrote in 2014. When I reached the 40th floor, the atmosphere was different. Usually, this floor hums with focused energy. Today, it felt performative. People were walking faster, talking louder, carrying stacks of paper that looked important but were likely blank. I walked straight to my office, the corner one with the view of the Potomac. Or rather, what used to be my office. Door was open. Inside, 2 facilities guys were moving a ficus tree into the corner. My desk, my mahogany desk where I had mapped out the logic gates for the missile interceptors, was gone. In its place was a sleek glass table with 4 chairs. A meeting pod. "Excuse me," I said. The guys stopped, looking guilty. "Where are my files, the hard drives that were in the safe?" Mr. Marks had them moved," one of them said, wiping sweat from his forehead, that he was repurposing the space for collaborative ideation. "Your stuff is in the annex." Cube 4B, the annex. That was code for the overflow area near the bathrooms. It was where they put the summer interns and the contractors they were about to fire. I felt a cold prickle of heat at the base of my neck. It wasn't anger. Anger is messy. Anger makes you sloppy. This was adrenaline. This was the system detecting a threat. Clayton wasn't just moving my desk, he was rewriting the narrative. He was physically removing me from the center of power before the final payout. I walked to the annex. It was a gray, windowless purgatory. There, in a cubicle meant for someone half my size, sat a cardboard box with my personal effects, a framed photo of my dog, a stress ball, and my award from the IEEE. My secure terminal, the one with direct lines to the Pentagon test servers, was disconnected and sitting on the floor. I sat in the cheap rolling chair. It squeaked. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of stale coffee and fear. Most people would have stormed into Clayton's office right then. They would have yelled. They would have threatened to sue. But I don't yell. I execute. I pulled out my personal laptop, air-gapped, encrypted with a key that exists only in my head, and opened a new file. I named it Log 0. If Clayton wanted to play a game of visibility, he was about to learn a very hard lesson about camouflage. The most dangerous things in the world aren't the ones standing in the spotlight, demanding attention. The most dangerous things are the ones you don't see until the impact counter hits 0. I opened my email on my phone since my terminal was dead. There was a message from Clayton, sent at 7:30 a.m. Subject: Transition and alignment, Diana, per our new operational directive, are streamlining the consultant interface. Please route all technical queries through my office for approval. We need to ensure a unified voice for the client. Thanks for being a team player. Unified voice, I whispered to the gray fabric of the cubicle wall. You mean your voice? I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot. Then I opened the calendar for the day. There was a strategic overview meeting at 10 o'clock a.m. I wasn't on the invite list. I checked my watch. 8:15 a.m. I had an hour and 45 minutes to prepare. I wasn't going to crash the meeting. That's desperate. I was going to be the ghost in the machine. I started typing, documenting every broken protocol, every security violation that moving my equipment had caused. Clayton thought he had demoted me. He didn't realize he had just given me a field position. And in the field, I never miss. The annex, as it turned out, was acoustically perfect for eavesdropping. The cheap partition walls were thin, and the ventilation ducts carried sound from the executive conference room down the hall with surprising clarity. I sat in Cube 4B, the squeaky chair still beneath me, and listened to the preliminary murmurs of the 10 o'clock a.m. meeting. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need a seat at the table to know the menu. Clayton Marks walked past the annex entrance at 9:55 a.m. I saw him through the gap in the partition. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, and he walked with that specific strut of a man who has failed upward his entire life. He was talking to his assistant, a terrified-looking young woman named Sarah. "Did you scrub the headers on the slide deck?" Clayton asked. His voice was a rich baritone, wasted on buzzwords. "Yes, Mr. Marks," Sarah whispered. "I replaced the author, D. Grant metadata with the company logo, just like you asked." "Good. And the encryption logic summary?" "The one with all the math, I simplified it. Put it into bullet points." "Excellent. We don't want to confuse the stakeholders with the weeds. We need to sell the vision." I felt a muscle in my jaw jump. The weeds he referred to were the cryptographic proofs that ensured a hacker couldn't redirect a Tomahawk missile into a population center. He was simplifying national security into a PowerPoint slide. I waited until they entered the conference room. I opened the internal messaging app on my phone. My access was restricted, but not gone. I could still see the status of the shared documents. I watched in real time as the file Sentinel Protocol v4.5 final was modified. The last edited by tag switched from D. Grant to C. Marks. He wasn't just taking credit, he was erasing the audit trail. This was dangerous. If something went wrong, in defense code, something always goes wrong, the investigators would look at the metadata. If his name was on it, he was liable. But Clayton was too arrogant to understand the liability he was absorbing. He only saw the glory. I decided to take a walk. I needed to see this vision in action. I walked past the conference room. The walls were glass, but they had been frosted recently, another transparency measure that actually blocked the view. The door was slightly ajar. I paused, pretending to check a message on my phone. The key to the Sentinel system, Clayton was saying, his voice projecting for the room, is the synergistic overlay of the AI heuristics. I almost laughed. Synergistic overlay. I had written a polymorphic engine that adapted to intrusion attempts in nanoseconds. He made it sound like a marketing filter. Clayton, a voice interrupted. It was Dr. Aris, the lead systems engineer. He was a good man, brilliant but timid. The heuristic engine isn't an overlay, it's the kernel. If we treat it as an overlay in the documentation, the due compliance team will flag it as a vulnerability. There was a pause. I could imagine Clayton's smile tightening. Aris, look, Clayton said, his tone condescendingly patient. I appreciate the technical nuance. Really, I do. But we are speaking to generals, not coders. They want to know it works. They don't care how the sausage is made. Let's not get bogged down in the how. Let's focus on the wow, the wow. I closed my eyes for a second. This man was going to get people killed. I walked back to my cube. My phone buzzed. It was an email from legal. Subject: Contractor status review. Miss Grant. Per the request of the VP of Strategic Accounts, we are reviewing the necessity of external consultancy for the maintenance phase. Please surrender your physical access keys to security by EOD Friday. Your digital access will be transitioned to read-only effective immediately. They were cutting the cord. Friday was 3 days away. The final presentation to the Pentagon was next Tuesday. Clayton was timing this perfectly. He wanted me gone, physically and digitally, before the general arrived. He wanted to be the only face in the room. I didn't reply to legal. I didn't storm into the meeting and slam my hand on the table. Instead, I opened my personal laptop again. I accessed a secure, encrypted partition that contained my insurance policy. Years ago, when I was working Black Ops logistics, I learned a vital lesson. Never build a house you can't lock from the outside. The Sentinel protocol was my house. And while Clayton had the keys to the front door, he didn't know about the foundation inspection hatch. I began to type. I wasn't sabotaging the code, that would be treason. I was a patriot, not a vandal. Instead, I was activating a latent logging feature I had embedded deep within the compiler. Every keystroke, every file modification, every version change made by Clayton or his team would now be mirrored to a secure server in my control. If he wanted to own the code, he was going to own every single mistake he made with it. Around noon, Clayton emerged from the conference room, high on his own supply. He spotted me in the annex. For a second, he looked surprised, as if he expected me to have evaporated already. Then he put on that slick, shark-like smile. Diana, he called out, walking over. He leaned against the partition of my cubicle, invading my space. Just the person I wanted to see. We had a great session in there. Really moved the ball down the field. I heard, I said, not looking up from my screen. The wow factor. He chuckled, missing the sarcasm entirely. Exactly. Look, I know this transition to the annex is a bit abrupt, but we need to lean up. And honestly, with the project moving to maintenance, your heavy lifting is done. We can handle the day-to-day. The protocol isn't in maintenance, Clayton, I said, finally looking him in the eye. It's in pre-deployment validation. If you change the metadata headers, you break the checksums. The DoD servers will reject the update. Waved a hand dismissively. We'll fix it in post. That's just details. Listen, I need you to forward all your raw data files to Sarah. We're consolidating the archives, and legal mentioned something about your keys. Friday, I said. Right, Friday. Well, let's make sure everything is handed over by then. We want a clean break. No loose ends. No loose ends, I repeated. He tapped the top of my cubicle wall and walked away, whistling. Thought he had just fired a subordinate. He didn't realize he had just dismissed the only person who knew how to fly the plane he was currently piloting. I watched him go. Make sure you save the originals, Clayton, I murmured. I turned back to my screen. The mirroring script was active. I opened a new document, incident report, unauthorized metadata modification / risk of checksum failure. I dated it, timestamped it, and digitally signed it. I wasn't just taking notes anymore. I was building a dossier. There's a diner about 5 miles south of the Helix Systems HQ. It's called The Hangar, and it hasn't been renovated since the Cold War. The vinyl booths are cracked, The coffee tastes like battery acid and burnt hazelnuts, and it is the preferred meeting spot for mid-level Pentagon brass who want to talk without a paper trail. I arrived at 6 p.m. The lunch rush was long gone. The dinner crowd hadn't arrived. The place was empty except for a trucker eating meatloaf, and in the back booth, Colonel Marcus Alvarez. Marcus wasn't wearing his uniform. He was in a gray hoodie and jeans, looking like a tired dad rather than the man responsible for the logistical deployment of the Eastern Seaboard's missile defense shield. But his posture gave him away. Back straight, eyes scanning the entrance every 3 seconds. When he saw me, he didn't smile, just nodded and moved his coffee cup to the side to clear space on the table. I slid into the booth opposite him. "You look like hell, Marcus. And you look like you're dressed for a funeral," he countered, eyeing my black blazer. "Maybe I am," I said. "How's the family?" "Sarah's good. Kids are expensive. Let's skip the pleasantries, D." My secure comms have been buzzing all day. I'm seeing update flags on the Sentinel project that don't match the deployment schedule. The authorship tags are weird. The waitress came over. "Coffee?" "Black," I said. "Keep it coming." Once she left, I leaned in. "The tags are weird because Clayton Marks is rewriting history. He scrubbed my name, Marcus. He's putting his own signature on the code blocks." Marcus swore quietly. He rubbed his face with both hands. I knew it. I told the general that Helix was getting shaky. "Who is this guy?" I looked up his file. "He's a suit. MBA from Wharton. Track record in cost optimization. He doesn't know a logic gate from a garden gate. He's the new VP," I said. "And as of this morning, he's the unified voice of the project. I've been moved to a cubicle by the bathroom, and my contract is being terminated on Friday." Marcus froze. He lowered his hands and looked at me with a terrifying intensity. "Terminated? Before the final review? That's suicide. General won't sign off on a system if the architect isn't in the room to vouch for it." "Clayton thinks he can vouch for it," I said dryly. "He thinks it's just a matter of selling the vision. He's going to crash the whole damn grid," Marcus hissed. "Diana, you know the integration protocols. If he forces an update with broken checksums during the live demo next week, the system will lock down." I finished for him. "It will interpret the mismatch as a hostile injection. We'll brick the defense servers for 48 hours while it purges the cache. We'll be blind. And $2 billion goes down the drain, along with my career and the general's stars." Marcus looked ready to punch the table. I should call him now. I should have MP pulled this Clayton clown out of his office. "No," I said sharply. "Not yet." "Why the hell not?" "Because if you intervene now, Clayton spins it. He'll say I'm a disgruntled contractor poisoning the well. Say the military is overreaching into corporate governance. He has the board in his pocket right now. He's promising them higher margins by cutting expensive consultants. If you attack him, he becomes a martyr." I reached into my purse. I pulled out a small, ruggedized external hard drive. It was black, heavy, and unassuming. "What's this?" Marcus asked. "This," I said, sliding it across the sticky Formica table, "is the truth. Contains the source code as of 0700 this morning, signed with my private key. It also contains a log of every change Clayton has made since he took over. It has the original threat simulations, the failure scenarios he deleted because they looked too negative, and the emails where he instructed his team to bypass the safety checks." Marcus put his hand on the drive. He didn't pick it up immediately. He just covered it, protecting it. "Want me to hold this?" "I want you to keep it off the grid," I said. "Don't plug it into a 2D machine yet. Just have it ready when the time comes." "When is the time?" "Tuesday," I said, "the final presentation." Marcus looked at me, realizing the plan. A slow, grim smile touched his lips. "You're going to let him hang himself." "I'm going to hand him the rope," I corrected. "He's the one tying the knot." The waitress returned with the coffee. The pot was stained brown, glass chipped. It was the most honest thing I'd seen all day. I took a sip. It was terrible. It was perfect. "One more thing," Marcus said, slipping the drive into his hoodie pocket. "We're hearing chatter. The board is nervous. They know Clayton is a risk, but they like his numbers. If he pulls off this presentation, he's untouchable. He becomes the CEO within a year." "He won't pull it off," I said. "How can you be sure?" I looked out the window at the parking lot, where a single street lamp was flickering. "Because he thinks the Sentinel protocol is a product. He doesn't understand that it's a living system. He thinks he can bully the code like he bullies his assistants." I turned back to Marcus. "He doesn't know that I built a dependency into the core logic. It requires a manual handshake, a specific cryptographic key entered by the lead architect every 30 days. If that handshake doesn't happen, System lockout, Marcus whispered. Handshake is due on Tuesday, I said. At 14:00 hours. Right in the middle of his presentation. Marcus laughed, a short, barking sound. You're cold, Diana, ice cold. I'm not cold, Marcus, I said, picking up the check. I'm just quality control. The next morning, I engaged in the futile ritual known as going to HR. In the corporate world, human resources is often described as a neutral arbiter. In reality, are the immune system of the company, designed to identify and isolate foreign bodies. And right now, I was the virus. I sat across from a woman named Tiffany. She was 20-something, with a smile that looked like it had been focus grouped. Her office was filled with inspirational posters. Teamwork makes the dream work, visualize success. So, Diana, Tiffany said, scanning the formal complaint I had just slid across her desk. You're alleging intellectual property theft and hostile work environment. I'm not alleging it, Tiffany, I'm documenting it. Clayton Marks has removed my name from the copyright headers of federal defense software. That's a felony under the Federal Acquisition Regulation. He has also instructed staff to ignore safety protocols. Tiffany sighed, the sound of someone dealing with a toddler who won't eat their peas. Diana, look. Clayton is very dynamic. His style is new. Sometimes, change can feel like hostility. But we have to look at the big picture. He's trying to create a cohesive brand narrative. Brand narrative? I repeated, my voice dropping an octave. We are building missile defense systems, not selling yoga pants. If the narrative is wrong, people die. Tiffany tapped her pen on the desk. See, this is the attitude I've been hearing about. Rigid, not a culture fit. Diana, your contract is ending. Maybe it's best to just let go. Finish the week, take your severance, and move on. Why burn bridges? I'm not burning bridges, I said, standing up. I'm reporting an arsonist. Tiffany didn't write anything down. She didn't open a file. She just smiled that plastic smile. I'll make a note of your concerns, Diana, but honestly, the board is very happy with Clayton's direction. I walked out. I had done my duty. I had filed the paperwork. The system had failed to correct itself. Now, it was free to use manual override. I went back to the annex. It was Thursday. 1 day left before my access was revoked. I had to move fast. I waited until lunch. The office cleared out around 12:30. Clayton always took a 2-hour lunch with potential investors, i.e., his buddies from the country club. The bullpen was quiet. I opened my laptop. I connected to the internal network. Because Clayton had insisted on streamlining access, he had merged the admin permissions. In his arrogance, he had given himself super user status, but he hadn't changed the default root password on the new server cluster. Login, admin password, password 123. I stared at the screen. It was pathetic. It was insulting. I was in. I navigated to the core directory. I found the file Sentinel kernel v5.0. This was the build they were planning to demo on Tuesday. I opened the code. Didn't delete anything. That would be sabotage. Instead, I located the 3 key modules responsible for the graphical user interface, the pretty pictures Clayton loved so much. I applied a layer of encryption to them, not a heavy one, just enough that the system would need to verify the author's credentials to render the graphics. If the author was listed as Clayton Marks, the system would check his hash against the code's hash. Since Clayton hadn't written a line of code in his life, the hashes wouldn't match. The system wouldn't crash. It would simply refuse to display the wow factor. Instead, it would display a raw error log. Specifically, error 403, author verification failed. Please contact administrator. I set the encryption to activate on a timer. Tuesday, 13:59. 1 minute before the presentation started. I also found the email Clayton had sent to the CFO, one Tiffany had hinted at. Subject, the grant issue, don't worry about her complaints. She's old guard, dinosaur, we need fresh blood. I'll have her out by Friday. Once she's gone, we can reallocate her budget line to the marketing push. Who needs a $200K architect for maintenance, right? I saved the email. Then, I did something petty. I admit it. Went into the digital cafeteria menu for the following week and changed Taco Tuesday to Traders Get Tacos. No one would notice until it was too late. I closed the laptop. My hands were steady. The trap was set. It wasn't a bomb. It was a mirror. All Clayton had to do was stand in front of it, and the world would see him for what he was. As I packed up my bag, my phone buzzed. It was an automated message from IT. Access revocation notice, user D. Grant, effective tomorrow, 17:00. You're too late, I whispered. I walked out of the annex past the glass conference room where Clayton's vision was written on a whiteboard in permanent marker. I didn't look back. Friday morning, my last day. The atmosphere in the office was suffocating. People avoided eye contact with me as I walked to the annex. They knew I was a dead woman walking. In corporate culture, failure is contagious. If you stand too close to the person getting fired, you might catch a layoff. At 10 o'clock a.m., there was a mandatory all-hands Zoom call to prep for the due D presentation. The invite in my inbox had a tag I hadn't seen before: Role, Observer Only/Audio Disabled. They had preemptively muted me. I sat in my cubicle, put on my headphones, and joined the call. On my screen, a grid of faces appeared. Clayton was in the center, large and high definition, broadcasting from his office. The rest of the team, Dr. Eris, Sarah, the junior devs, were in smaller boxes, looking tired. Team, Clayton began, his voice booming. This is it, the home stretch. Tuesday is going to be a defining moment for Helix. We are going to show the Pentagon that we aren't just a contractor, we are a partner. He pulled up a screen share. It was the slide deck. Slide 1, Sentinel Protocol, the Future of Defense, presented by Clayton Marks, VP of Strategy. My name was nowhere, not even in the special thanks footer. It was as if I had never existed. He clicked to Slide 4, Technical Architecture. As you can see, Clayton narrated, we have streamlined the logic pathways. We removed the redundant verification loops to increase speed by 40%. I gasped. I couldn't help it. Redundant verification loops. Those weren't redundancies. Those were the safety checks that prevented the system from mistaking a flock of geese for a nuclear warhead. He had removed them. I frantically typed into the chat box, Clayton, you cannot remove the verification loops. That violates the fail-safe compliance. The message appeared for a split second. Then it vanished, deleted by the moderator. Clayton didn't even pause. I see some activity in the chat. Let's keep the channel clear for constructive feedback only. Don't want to get bogged down in negativity. He was gaslighting the entire engineering team. I looked at Dr. Eris's video feed. He looked pale, he knew, but he had a mortgage and 3 kids. He stayed silent. Now, Clayton continued regarding the live demo. We will be running the interceptor scenario. It's flashy, it's loud, the general will love it. I'll drive the simulation from my terminal. He was going to run a live simulation on a gutted system. It was madness. I tried to unmute myself. The icon remained gray. The host has disabled your microphone. I sat there, gripping the edge of my desk until my knuckles turned white. This was the ultimate power move. He wasn't just firing me, he was forcing me to watch him dismantle my life's work while gagging me. Any questions? Clayton asked. No? Great, let's break. Great work, everyone. Especially you, Sarah, on those slides. Really pops. The call ended. Screen went black. I took off my headphones. The silence in the annex was deafening. I felt a tear hot and sharp in the corner of my eye. I wiped it away angrily. No, I would not cry for this man. I spent the rest of the afternoon deleting my personal files. Not the project files, I left those intact, the poisoned chalice for Clayton to drink from. I cleared my browser history. I wiped my local cache. At 4:45 p.m., a security guard, Miller, one who usually nodded to me, appeared at my cubicle. He looked miserable. Miss Grant, he said, holding a cardboard box. Mr. Marks asked me to escort you out. He wants your badge and your laptop. I stood up. I buttoned my blazer. I picked up my purse and the small framed photo of my dog. It's okay, Miller, I said softly. You're just following orders. I handed him the badge. I handed him the laptop. He said, you're not allowed back on the premises, Miller added, looking at his shoes. Don't worry, I said. I won't need a badge for where I'm going. I walked out of the building. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the glass facade of Helix Systems. I got into my car. I didn't go home. I drove to a parking lot overlooking the Potomac. I sat there for an hour, watching the river move, dark and inevitable. Clayton thought he had won. He thought he had erased me. He had made one critical error. He forgot who the audience was on Tuesday. He thought he was performing for a boardroom. He was actually performing for the only people on Earth who valued competence over charisma. And I had a front row seat. The weekend passed in a blur of nervous energy. I didn't sleep much. I spent my time reviewing the mirrored logs on my personal server, watching Clayton's digital footprints as he frantically prepared for Tuesday. He was editing slides at 2 o'clock a.m. He was sending emails to the catering company, obsessing over the type of sparkling water to be served. He was rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. On Sunday night, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. "Hello, Miss Grant." The voice was whispered, shaky. It's Kevin, junior dev, from the back-end team." "Kevin," I said, my voice softening. "You shouldn't be calling me." "If Clayton finds out, I don't care," Kevin interrupted. I had to say it. "We all know. The whole team. We saw the commit logs before he scrubbed them. We know you wrote the kernel. We know he's taking credit." There was a silence on the line. I felt a lump in my throat. Validation, when you've been gaslit for weeks, feels like oxygen. "Thank you, Kevin. That means more than you know." "He's driving us crazy," Kevin continued, his voice picking up speed. "He's making us hard-code the simulation results. Wants the demo to show a 100% intercept rate, even though the physics engine says it should be 85%. He's faking the data, Miss Grant. He's rigging the test." "I know, Kevin. What do we do?" Dr. Aris is too scared to speak up. "If this system goes live like this..." "Listen to me," I said, my voice shifting into command mode. "Do exactly what he says. Hard code the results. Let him have his 100% intercept rate. Fight him. But Kevin, trust me, do you have a secure email?" "Yeah, Proton Mail. Text it to me. I'm going to send you a file. It's a sealed envelope. Don't open it. Just keep it on your desktop. If anyone asks, say it's a diagnostic tool I left behind. On Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., I want you to forward that file to General Sloan's adjutant." "Can you do that?" "General Sloan," Kevin squeaked. "Want me to email the Pentagon?" "It's just a file, Kevin. It's harmless, unless you're a liar. Then it's very dangerous." "Okay," he breathed. "Okay, I'll do it. For the record, you were the best boss I ever had. Keep your head down, Kevin." I hung up. The file I sent him wasn't code. It was a PDF. It was a timeline. A simple, chronological list of every decision Clayton had made that compromised national security, cross-referenced with the federal code it violated. By Monday, the atmosphere at Helix was apparently toxic. According to the mirrored emails, rumors were swirling. Someone in accounting had leaked that Clayton was already shopping for a new company car, a Porsche, on the company dime, anticipating his bonus. The engineering team was in revolt, silent but palpable. Clayton sent a company-wide email at 4 p.m. on Monday. "Team, tomorrow is our Super Bowl. I want everyone in their best dress." Smiles on. "Are selling the future. Let's make it happen." See, he signed it C, like he was James Bond's boss. I spent Monday evening ironing my suit, not the gray one I usually wore, the navy blue one, the power suit, the one I wore when I briefed the Senate Oversight Committee. I wasn't invited to the meeting. I had been banned from the building. But there is a loophole in every contract, a backdoor in every system. General Sloan wasn't just a client. It was my former commanding officer from my time as a civilian analyst in Kabul. We had history. And more importantly, General Sloan hated one thing above all else, being lied to. I had sent a text to Marcus on Sunday. "Diana, is the general aware of the guest list?" "Marcus, he thinks you'll be there." "Clayton listed you as lead consultant on the agenda he sent to the Pentagon." I stared at the text. Clayton was lying to the general about my presence, was using my name to get them in the room, planning to explain my absence with some excuse. "Oh, Diana is sick, or she had a family emergency." He was using me as bait. "Diana, don't correct him. Let him believe I'm coming." "Marcus, copy that. See you in the kill zone." I checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked tired, but my eyes were clear. Tomorrow, Clayton Marks was going to learn that you can steal code, you can steal credit, and you can steal an office. You cannot steal the room. Tuesday morning broke with a sky the color of bruised iron. Rain lashed against the windshield of my car as I drove toward Helix Systems. It was fitting weather for demolition. I arrived at 13:30. The presentation was scheduled for 14:00. The parking lot was full of black SUVs with government plates. The general's entourage had arrived. I walked to the front entrance. The young guard from last week was there, saw me approaching and looked panicked. He reached for his radio. "Miss Grant," he stammered as I pushed through the revolving door. I can't let you in. Mr. Marks was very specific. You're on the do not admit list." I stopped. I looked him in the eye. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a different badge. Not a Helix badge, a Department of Defense contractor badge issued directly by the Pentagon. It had a gold chip, granted access to any facility hosting classified DoD material. "I'm not here as a Helix employee, son," I said. "I'm here as a federal asset inspecting a secure site. If you block me, you are obstructing a federal audit." "Do you want to explain that to the MPs outside?" The guard swallowed hard. He looked at the badge, then at the SUVs outside, then back at me. The color drained from his face. He lowered the radio. "Go ahead, ma'am." I walked past him. Step 1 complete. I took the elevator to the 40th floor. The silence was absolute. The entire floor had been cleared for the VIPs. The hallway leading to the boardroom was lined with fresh flowers, lilies. They smelled like a funeral. I reached the heavy oak double doors of the boardroom. I could hear voices inside, laughter, the clink of china. They were having coffee before the start. I smoothed my blazer. I took a breath. I pushed the doors open. The room froze. It was a large oval table. At the head sat General Sloan, looking like a granite statue in dress blues. Beside him was Marcus, who gave me a microscopic nod. On the other side were the Helix executives, the CFO, the CEO, and Clayton. Clayton was standing near the screen, holding a laser pointer. When he saw me, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second before reassembling into a mask of annoyed condescension. "Diana," he said, his voice loud enough to carry, "I didn't realize you were coming. We've already started the preliminary briefing." He walked over to me, positioning his body to block me from the general's view. He lowered his voice to a hiss. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I told security I'm here for the presentation, Clayton," I said calmly. "I'm the architect." He laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. He put a hand on my shoulder, a patronizing, heavy grip. "Diana, look, appreciate your past contributions. Really. But this is a strategic-level discussion. We need the A-team in here. Your support staff, and frankly, you're disrupting the flow." He turned to the room, smiling at the general. "Apologies, General, miscommunication with our vendor. We like to run a tight ship." He turned back to me, his eyes cold and dead. "Consultants wait outside, Diana. There's a chair in the hall. We'll call you if we need." Tech support. Room was silent. The CEO looked at his notepad. The CFO checked his watch. No one spoke. They were letting it happen. They were watching him kick me out of my own life. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. The humiliation was physical, a blow to the gut. To be dismissed like an unruly child in front of the men I had served for a decade. I looked at Clayton. I looked at the door. "Is that your final decision, Mr. Marks?" I asked. "It is," he said. "Please, leave." I nodded slowly. I turned around. I walked toward the door. My heels clicked on the parquet floor, marking time. Click, click, click. I reached for the handle. I was 1 second away from walking out and letting the building burn down behind me. "Hold on." The voice was gravel and thunder. It didn't come from Clayton. I stopped. My hand hovered over the brass latch. General Sloan stood up. The sound of his chair scraping back was like a gunshot. General Sloan didn't shout. Didn't have to. When a 3-star general speaks, the acoustics of the room rearrange themselves to accommodate him. "Clayton," the general said, "did I hear you correctly? Did you just refer to Miss Grant as support staff?" Clayton blinked, his smile wavering. "Well, yes, General. In the corporate hierarchy, she's an external contractor." "We're streamlining I don't give a damn about your corporate hierarchy," Sloan interrupted, walking around the table, moved with the heavy, predatory grace of a tank. "I care about the Sentinel protocol. And according to the briefing you sent me, Miss Grant is the lead architect." "On paper, yes," Clayton stammered, sweat starting to bead on his forehead. "But in practice, I've been overseeing the strategic vision. The code it's a commodity. Anyone can write code." The general stopped in front of Clayton. He looked down at him. "A commodity?" Sloan turned to me. "Miss Grant, please, come back to the table." I turned. I walked back, standing next to the general. Clayton looked like he wanted to vomit. "Miss Grant," Sloan said, his eyes never leaving Clayton. "How long have we worked together?" 12 years, General," I said. "Since Project Iron Dome." 12 years, Sloan repeated. He looked at the Helix CEO. "This woman wrote the encryption that keeps the Chinese out of the Pentagon's servers. She wrote the logistical algorithms that supplied my troops in Kandahar. If she leaves this room, the United States government cancels this $2 billion contract before she hits the elevator button. Is that clear?" The CEO turned pale. "General, we didn't realize." "Obviously," Sloan snapped. He turned back to Clayton. "Now, Mr. Marks, you were about to show us a live simulation. The interceptor scenario?" "Yes, sir," Clayton said, his voice cracking. It's ready, good, run it." Clayton scrambled to his laptop. He plugged in the HDMI cable. The main screen flickered to life. The Helix logo spun. "Okay," Clayton said, typing frantically. "Initiating launch sequence." I checked my watch. 13:59. Clayton hit enter. The screen went black, then red text appeared. "Critical error 403, author verification failed. Cryptographic handshake required. Please contact lead architect D. The room went deadly silent. The red text pulsed on the giant 80-inch screen, casting a demonic glow over Clayton's terrified face. What is this? The CEO hissed. It's a glitch, Clayton stuttered, hitting keys at random. It's just a display bug. The system is running in the background, I swear. It's not a glitch, I said, my voice cutting through the panic. It's a security feature. The system requires the lead architect to verify the build integrity every 30 days. It prevents unauthorized users or hijackers from deploying the weapon. I looked at Clayton. Since you removed my name from the authorization list, the system assumes you are a hostile actor. It has locked you out. Clayton stared at the screen. Fix it, he whispered to me. Diana, please, fix it. I looked at the general. Sloan crossed his arms. He was smiling. A terrifying, shark-like smile. Well, Mr. Marks, Sloan said, it seems you have a choice. Can admit you don't know how to fly this plane, or you can crash it. Clayton looked at the CEO, who was currently glaring at him with murder in his eyes. He looked at the general, then he looked at me. The arrogance was gone. He was just a small man in a suit that was too expensive for him. I can't fix it, Clayton whispered. I don't know the key. Step away from the terminal, the general ordered. Clayton stepped back, defeated. Sloan gestured to the chair at the head of the table, his chair. Miss Grant, if you would, I sat down. I pulled my laptop from my bag. I connected to the secure port. Authorizing override, I said, typing the command. Key Archangel 01. The red screen vanished. The map of the eastern seaboard appeared. Green lights flickered across the grid. The interceptors deployed. The simulation ran perfectly. 100% success rate. System active, I said. Ready for command. The general nodded, outstanding. He turned to the CEO of Helix. You have a serious personnel problem. I suggest you fix it before I leave the building. The CEO stood up. Mr. Marks, my office now. Clayton walked out of the room. He didn't look at me. He walked past the flowers, past the glass walls, into oblivion. I stayed in the chair. The general sat down next to me. Good to see you, Diana, he said quietly. Good to see you, General. Fallout was swift and brutal, as corporate executions usually are. By the time I left the boardroom at 16:00, Clayton Marks was no longer an employee of Helix Systems. I saw security escorting him out. He was holding a small cardboard box, the same size as the one I had carried on Friday. He was arguing with Miller at the turnstiles, but Miller wasn't listening. He just took Clayton's badge and pointed to the door. Poetic justice is rare in this world. I took a moment to savor it. The next week was a blur of restructuring. The CEO, desperate to save the contract, gave me everything I asked for. My office was restored. They even brought back the ficus tree. My budget was doubled. My team was given raises and full autonomy. I sat in my office on Monday morning. The glass door was open. Kevin walked by and gave me a thumbs up. Dr. Eris stopped in to drop off a coffee. It's quiet, Eris said, without the synergies and paradigms. It's peaceful, I corrected. It's the sound of work actually getting done. An hour later, an internal memo went out to the entire company. From Office of the CEO to All Staff Subject. Leadership update effective immediately. The Strategic Accounts Division is being dissolved. All defense projects will now report directly to the newly formed Office of Advanced Technology, led by Chief Technical Officer Diana Grant. I read the email. CTO, it was a nice title. It came with a corner office on the 50th floor and a salary that would let me retire in 5 years if I wanted to. But I didn't want to retire. My phone rang. It was General Sloan. Congratulations on the promotion, Diana, he said. Thank you, General. Thank you for the assist. I didn't do it for you, he said gruffly. I did it for the grid. But listen, I have a new file for you. It's not missile defense. It's bigger domestic infrastructure. Power, water data. We need a unified resilience protocol. Something that connects everything. It's messy, it's political, and it's impossible. That's why I want you to lead it. I looked out the window at the Potomac. The river kept flowing, different to the battles we fought in glass towers. Send the file, I said. A moment later, a secure document appeared in my inbox. Project, Civil Resilience Network, Project Lead, D. Grant, clearance level, Yankee White. I opened the file. It was a mess of disconnected systems, vulnerable legacy code, and bureaucratic red tape. It was a disaster waiting to happen. I smiled. I cracked my knuckles. Clayton had wanted to build a brand. He wanted a narrative. He wanted to be the hero of a story he didn't understand. I don't need to be a hero. I'm the architect, and I have work to do. I typed the first command, initialize log1. The cursor blinked, waiting for my input. I was back in command. And this time, I wasn't waiting outside for anyone.
Life doesn't always hand out clean endings, but sometimes it gives you exactly what you need. Thanks for listening. Until next time.